Aurene has the potential to not only destroy Krautkatorik, but also replace it.
Aurene has had a premonition, a vision of the future, of multiple futures.
How about it, Aurene? Are we ready?
Hello. Hi, my name is Coberly. I am the art director for Guild Wars. We wanted to do something artsy this year, and so I am an oil painter. I show at a few galleries around town on my side job. So they were like, hey, we have a lot of people doing awesome cosplay of Guild Wars characters. Would you be interested in doing a live demo of a awesome cosplayer in a Guild Wars outfit? I was like, yeah, awesome. I was previously the character lead for a very long time. Guild Wars 1, Guild Wars 2, so it's actually right up my alley. So as you can see, I cheated and got a head start. Because this is only an hour I felt that it would be nice to have 2 hours to get as much going as I could. I have taken some reference photos so that I can continue working when I get back home. I'm not a massive entertainer, so I will just kind of sit and paint. But feel free to shout out very loudly if you have a question. I think we only have one microphone, so that's why I'm saying that. Happy to answer questions. This is oil paint. Okay, take care of this right off the bat. So if anybody was wondering why it says squint and keep squinting, I do teach both painting and drawing. And one of the core aspects, especially about representational art, is when you're looking at a scene, you can be really overwhelmed with the amount of information that's there, and especially values. And I always think it's really, really important to simplify your values. And so when you squint, it actually condenses the light that hits your eye and turns your scene into a more compressed value range. So when you're looking at something, and especially quite often if you're painting and you have an area that's in shadow and an area that's in light, your eyes will adjust to whatever you're looking at. So if you're looking at the light side, you'll see all of the little details. And if you're looking at the shadow side, you'll see all the little details. And quite often people will start off where their lights are here and the darks are here, and they're like, yeah, that's a good relationship. And then the more details you go, the more you kind of start making them the same value. Quite often you'll see people like putting whites of the eyes in the shadow area, and it kind of gets rid of the three-dimensionality. So squinting helps, but then as you go, remember to keep squinting, because you will start diving into those shadow areas and try to bring those up. So always remind yourself to keep squinting. So that's taking care of that. So I'm going to get back to it. We're going to take every 25 minutes, I'll take a 5-minute break. So that's actually a perfect time to ask questions and stuff. And we will start now with our next 25-minute segment. So as you can see, I really start off with big shapes of color, getting my global kind of big value ranges blocked in. On this one, I did start with the darks because the light is so dramatic. I really wanted to focus on making sure that I get that dark in so that I can really evaluate my lights against the dark. Quite often, people will, especially if they start off with a white canvas, will start doing their skin tones and everything right on the white canvas. and you're going to be fighting that. You're going to go, oh my gosh, that looks so dark compared to the white, and you're going to have the feeling of wanting to make your lights a lot lighter because you're going against the canvas color. But if you block it in, it allows you then to see the values more clearly. I do use a lot of brushes. I basically kind of use one brush per color range. So I'll have my darks, my cool darks, cools being blues, purples, that kind of range. I'll have one brush that kind of is for those colors. I can move back and forth between blues and greens, and then I'll have a lot of medium-sized brushes, and then eventually I'll even have some smaller ones, possibly smaller ones today, depending on how far we go. Right now I'm just looking at the kind of the broader value ranges. I am thinking about the shapes, not necessarily that's a hand or, that's a sword. I'm more thinking about the shapes of value that area occupies. I'm using a relatively limited palette. I'm using one yellow, which is a cadmium lemon. I'm using one blue, and that's an ultramarine blue deep. And then I'm using two reds. I'm using an alizarin crimson, which is it's a cool red. It's great for purples. It's kind of it's going towards the magenta-y side. Really great for roses or rosiness. And then a cadmium red, which is very opaque, warm red. When you think of like warms and cools, think of like ice and fire. That's a good kind of way to think about that. So cadmium red is a very fiery red. There's areas that I will look at that I feel are really where I want the eye to focus on, and areas where I feel I can let go and play with more abstract shapes. Generally with a model, with a figure, your face, eyes will be your center of focus, and then elements will kind of dissipate from that. I think today, obviously the outfit is really important because it took a lot of time to put together. But then also, I think story-wise, probably the outfit with the choya kind of gives a nice little story. So that will be kind of my primary focus will be the face and the choya. That is a good question. I am using, for my blue, ultramarine blue deep, I am using Rembrandt. For my alizarin crimson, I'm using Winsor Newton. For my my cadmium red is actually a cadmium vermilion, and it is handmade by a small artist colorist in the South, and it's from a company called Blue Ridge Oil Paints. I did some studying, and the closest thing to vermilion, which is a color that was really, it was the kind of the dominant high pigment red in the, you know, everything up to the 19th century. But it was also made with mercury, which was obviously very toxic. And so the cadmiums came in, they're you know, chemically based. But there's, you know, with the classic colors, you're always, oh, what did Sargent use there? What did Velasquez use there? And so I follow an artist who really gets into the nitty-gritties of color. And he bought a whole bunch of different colors and compared them all and had swatches of classic colors. And he found that this Blue Ridge were the closest he could find to matching the vermilion, the classic mercury-based vermilion. It's actually, sadly, or not necessarily sadly, because, you know, sometimes you get really attached to a product and then they might discontinue it and you go, oh my God. I'm just keeping my fingers crossed that these guys stay around. There's one guy, he's actually a really cool guy. I did have a scare a couple years ago where I went to his website and was restocking, and I went to the cadmium vermilion page and it wasn't there. And I emailed him, and he was like, oh, I'm sorry, I was just updating the website and that page didn't reload. I'm like, just gave me a heart attack. But it is now when I've gone back to use your average cadmium red, it actually feels a lot cooler. It for some reason I mean, even though what you can see, see the one on the bottom left? See, it looks very orangey. But it's a very, I mean, it's red, but it's kind of like this slightly orangey red. So it's really has that fiery feel, and quite often just cadmium red medium will be just a little bit closer to the alizarin crimson. So now I can never go back. I'm stuck.
Are you self-taught?
I did not go to school. And I'm also really old, so it was before the internet. So I had a mentor for probably about a year, who his number one piece of advice to me, which is stuck and that I pass on. There's really no excuse for time on the boards. There's no excuse for just doing it, getting in there and doing it. And so, yeah, I mean, I would say yes, but I've had a lot of friends, I've had a lot of advice. I have done a workshop here or there with artists that I admire. And so I'm not purely self-taught, but I didn't go to school.
What medium are you using?
I am actually not. I did, so I do with my darks, I'll do, and my initial drawing, I'll do thinned down paint, which is just a gamma sol, which is, well, that's really different. It's an odorless turpentine, so it's safer. And then I'll just thin down my paints with that. And then I don't, and then it's all pretty direct. I do, however, mix marble dust, and I've been experimenting a little bit lately with mixing marble dust and stand oil into my white. Marble dust, it actually is really interesting, and the reason I've been experimenting with it is it gives it kind of a translucency, and an oil already innately kind of has a translucency with the oil, but with the marble dust, you know how marble has that translucency, has that light that penetrates it? It just kind of adds to the translucency of the paint, and then to get a little glossy, I've been experimenting with putting a little bit of stand oil in that mixture. I've only done it, this is maybe the second painting I've used this specific experiment on, with the adding the marble dust. I've been using, with adding the stand oil. I've been using the marble dust for maybe 2 years now in my white.
So you like to have your whites or your lights be defined by the paint. You don't let much of the canvas show through.
Correct. Yeah, I'm kind of a control freak that way. Also, I feel like whites are where you want a lot of, it's where the light hits. And so to me, I want a lot of the, that's where I would have my glossiness, that's where I would have my depth. And so I find that if it's just the canvas, it can kind of flatten out.
How many artists do you work with, and how do you maintain like Guild Wars 2's like quintessential art style across all these individual contributors?
So on the Guild Wars team right now, we have, I mean, if you think about it, we have, I was just giving a presentation to a Dutch school and kind of going over what the art umbrella is in video games. And, you know, there's an animation team, there's an effects team, there's a cinematics team, there's a creature team, there's a character team, there's a prop team, there's a map art team, and each one of those teams has, you know, a number of artists on it. One of the things, so Daniel Dochu was our kind of our godfather art director for Guild Wars, and one of the things that he instilled, which I think was really valuable to the artists, and I think that's what has made Guild Wars a very art-friendly company, is he wanted to bring in a lot of people with a lot of different artistic styles and a lot of artistic personalities, and have that add to the whole. And what he said was, you know, I don't care as much about what it is, I care more about how it's crafted and the quality of the craftsmanship behind it. So, you know, as long as we maintain the handcrafted, artisanal feel, you can have a lot of things that exist within that. And so that's kind of our core. It allows the artist to be very creative and kind of give us an umbrella to kind of be really free underneath. And so that's how we maintain our artistic quality. And we just have a lot of amazing artists.
I have a bit of a longer question, perhaps.
All right.
So I run the Guild Wars 2 Artist Collective, and we have a lot of a range of artists, I guess, from amateur artists to professional artists.
Yep.
But for the most part, probably like 95% of our applicants are digital only. And I think a lot of that is because it's very hard to translate like oil painting, traditional painting into portfolio pieces. What would you tell people who like traditional pieces but don't know how to translate it into a digital showcase?
And I think that this is a really good thing for all artists to think about, and really no matter what discipline. The most important thing, the technologically agnostic aspect of art is a skill that you should continue to grow for the rest of your life, and really that's the core design principles. Core design principles, it doesn't matter what medium you're using, and it doesn't, technology is going to continue to evolve. Substance designers getting crazy, and so within that, having an understanding of color harmony, having an understanding of shape language, having an understanding of value distribution. I mean, having strong core design principles will put you ahead of the pack. And then learning the technical things it'll just advance your skills. But I have noticed in my time that with the advancements of technology and ZBrush and so many ways for artists to express themselves, and the ease of entry is a lot easier, that there are more artists who are capable of doing the technical stuff but don't have as strong of a design sensibility. And so that's one of the things that I would say should always be a focus, is continue to hone those design skills. From traditional, I mean, the challenge with traditional versus digital is, if I didn't like this blue, I would then have to repaint it all. Digital, you can just use shift and paint it out, and so the adjustments are a lot easier digitally. But I think that the honing your skill, drawing, thinking about value, understanding perspective, all of those skills are, you can see somebody that has like really strong design skills, and they separate themselves out from the pack. I don't know if that answered your question or not. It was a long answer, though.
Do you have a favorite character you've worked on?
Do I have? I don't think I do, actually. I mean, no, no. To answer that question, no.
Alternatively, do you have a favorite backdrop piece or environment piece that you think you really nailed and nobody else complimented you on? The bubble quiver tree.
No, I mean, so I come from the character art background, and so I think when you come from a character art background, you understand that you're not going to please everybody all of the time, and you just live with that, and that's okay. So I think that a feeling like I didn't get appreciated on something, for us as as a creative team, we rely on each other, and we have to believe in that in our quality bar, in the things that we're doing, and then just keep moving forward. Yeah, I don't know if I have something that specifically I did that again, it's hard. People ask me like what my favorite color is or what my favorite movie. There is no such thing, I don't have a favorite movie. I don't have a favorite color. I love so many different movies for what they are. I can't have a favorite color because all of the colors combine to make their own thing, and I can't live without a color.
Did you have a particularly challenging creation that you had to work on for a long time, like one that sticks out to you?
Well, I think in Guild Wars 2, translating Guild Wars 1 to Guild Wars 2, was challenging and not, not necessarily a specific area, but I think when you have a product that is, so loved, hitting that mark with the next one, especially with the characters, it took us a while to get to that area that we wanted to be. Technology, design, kind of everything came into play to kind of do it, and so I would say that was the last great challenge that I had.
Do you usually work wet on wet?
So I do a lot of painting. I organize a open session over on the east side, and I do a lot of painting from life. And so in a limited time frame, quite often it's like a 3-hour pose, but I'll do like 6-hour poses, so it'll be the same pose for 2 weeks. I'll do a 9-hour pose. I would say that yes, I do most commonly do wet on wet, but I do studio work where I'll work on the same painting for, I've worked on the same painting for a year, and everything up to a 2-hour painting. So yeah, it's across the board. I also don't specifically have a favorite subject. I really love painting. I love the process of painting. I do find myself painting people, and one of those things is because I organize a session, and so I know that every week I'm going to be all right. Let's take 5. Don't worry, you're fine. You're fine. I'll continue painting, but you keep moving.
So
So the question is, do I consider myself an oil painter, and if so, how did that bring me to video games? I went about getting into the video game industry in the correct way, which was I attended open life drawing sessions back in the late 90s. I had worked in digital art. I worked at a company doing video post-production. This is also the correct way to get a job in video post-production. I was actually working in a restaurant, and this Mama's Mexican Kitchen, I don't know if anybody ever remembers that, in the early 90s. And I was sending around my resume. I was working with an artist doing murals, and I wanted to, I was like, obviously the restaurant's like a temporary thing. And so I was sending around my resume, hoping to get an art position. And just one day, out of the blue, this company called and was like, hey, we're looking at your resume. Do you have paintbox experience? And this is, of course, before the internet. This is, of course, before having a web page, anything like that. And so I was like, yeah, I do have paintbox experience. I thought at the time, the lie is the lie no matter what, but my thought process at the time was that a paintbox was what animators used when they paint the backs of film or transparencies for animation. And so I was like, yep, that's me. And so I went in for my interview, and the art director was like, you don't know what a paintbox is, do you? And I was like, no, actually, I don't. And he's like, well, you know what? And I had a portfolio where I had a lot of drawings and paintings and stuff. And he said, well, I can teach you the technical stuff. I can't teach you that stuff. So he hired me. I think $7 an hour. And so I worked there for a few years, and then actually moved to London, did some storyboard work there, and then moved back to America and got a job doing graphic design, and would attend open sessions. And Daniel Dochu was attending the same sessions. And one day he came up to me and was like, hey, have you ever thought about getting into video games? And I was like, no, I don't really know much about video games. And he was like, well, are you happy doing what you're doing right now? And I'm like, I'm not in love with it. He's like, well, give me your number. I might contact you. I'm like, okay. So he actually contacted me maybe like a month later or something, and was like, hey, I have a friend in like Alabama or something. They're looking for an artist. Would you be interested in relocating? And we had just moved back from London, and I was like, you know what, I really don't want to relocate. He's like, okay, yeah, no problem. Calls me again. Hey, so I have a friend over at Nintendo. Would you be interested in, looking into that? And I was a genius, and I said, I was living in Seattle. I'm like, oh, the bridge, I don't know. No, I'm fine. And like I said, this is the correct way to do it. And then he calls me again. All right, downtown Seattle. Here's a company. and that's how I got into the video games. But I've always drawn. I've always, you know, I love this side of things, and I think that has always. When so I did live in LA for a while, and a similar type of experience. I was working in a cafeteria at an aerospace corporation, and I was selling donuts in the morning in one of the buildings, and in that building was their graphics department. And I would only be selling donuts for so long, and then I would have time to kill after the rush. And one day, the manager, who I became friends with, came out and said, "Hey, one of our guys just quit, and we're looking for an artist. Would you be interested?" I'm like, "Yeah, what do I need to know?" He's like, "Well, you have to have some computer graphics experience," and I had zero. So I went to Kinko's that night and drew a plane on McDraw Pro with a mouse. It was really, really, really bad. And then I went back home and did another pencil drawing of a plane, and with all the it was like a fighter jet, so I had all the reflected light and all of the chrome, or not necessarily chrome, but all of the silver, and you just try to go to town on detail and all the little nuances. And went in the next day and I was like, "Okay, here's my digital work, but I can do this." And he's like, "Well, honestly, the thing that's most important to me is having somebody who has the skills but also can get along with the people on the team, and you already know everybody on the team, and so we want to give you a chance." So, yeah, luck. Luck can be a big factor, but I would say that the number one constant is that I've just always been doing art. I've always been drawing and painting and loving that aspect of it. So I think that's the most important thing in getting a job or keeping a job and in any career is just being passionate about it. I mean, the best artists that I've ever known are people who just live it. Their weekends, they're studying, and I want to study this aspect of anatomy. I want to study this aspect of composition. Their life is their passion, their creativity. I don't do this at work. I think that we need to always allow for some creative exploration in development. Otherwise, you're always going to be really stiff and stale. So we do focus on trying to include in schedules. I mean, if it's going to be something that, it's a very known quantity, okay, we need this, and it needs to be for that, and this is the timeline, okay, yep, that's fine. But, if there are new things we're introducing or, areas we want to explore, we need to allow for our artists to take some chances and not have that, a very tight deadline that means that, okay, whatever you got in that week, that's what we're sticking with, it's certainly a balancing act. There's times where we wish we could do it more. you know, there's times when, yeah, with, you know, amazing things have come out of that. I mean, quite often, really great things come out of that exploration process. It's just, you know, it's finding that, in development, it is finding that balance and making sure that you do remember that that's part of the process. That's where ideas come from, is that kind of open mind exploration.
Hey, Aaron.
Yes?
So, is there a method to your madness? Because you started with the arm when we came in.
Bouncing around.
A little bit ahead. It's just like, what catches your eye? How do you move from one spot to another?
Yes. It's quite often, it's just something that does catch my eye. That's something that I do want to fill the canvas. And so I'll look at areas that that quite often I'll just, once I have the initial block in, I'll just look for areas that are kind of bugging me. And go, oh, that area is kind of bugging me right now. I just taught a workshop at Gage a couple months ago, and I don't know why, but I had a plan going into it, and then while I started painting, I was like, oh, you know what, I'm going to use a palette knife to kind of start blocking things in and kind of getting some shapes with a palette knife, and I ended up doing the whole painting with a palette knife, and that wasn't my plan going into it, but that's, yeah. I mean, definitely there is a process, and then sometimes if you, and that's another thing, like if you have the primary values, if your drawing is there, and if your values are correct, it allows for a lot of freedom. It allows for a lot of the ability to play a little bit, because your foundation, basically think about value and drawing as your foundation, and if your foundation is strong, you can play with what's on top of your foundation a lot more. If your foundation is, you know, if you're fighting your foundation, you're going to be fighting that the whole time. Also, Mike, because I'm in a 2-hour time frame, I do usually, in the 3-hour time frame, which I do paint a lot in, I probably have a little bit more method to my madness. In the 2-hour, I am kind of bouncing around a lot. So I would say that I think both things happen at the same time, and backstories evolve. You know, I don't know for sure if all of the characters that we have in the game, we knew all of their backstory when we made those characters. I think, huh? Is that true? We know that.
It's definitely an evolution.
Yeah. And so, you know, from a character standpoint, you know, I think, let's take Logan, for example. We knew he was honorable. We knew he was a heroic. We knew he was kind of grumpy. So really that's with the relationship with design and art, it's really helpful to have a balance where we meet design's core requirements, and then design allows the artist to have some freedom within that, and then that helps that evolution, that helps that kind of, okay, what's going to work? Oh, you know, this character looks looks like this here. Maybe if they did this, or you can get into the minutia. I have had in the past character briefs where it got really very technical, where this character, in their past they had a traumatic situation, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. I'm like, I have 800 polygons to work with. Give me the core. Is he a tough guy? Is he, bad guy, good guy, that kind of stuff. So there's a balance. There's stuff that I think the best designs are when artists and designers really collaborate and are able to come up with some cool stuff together.
So kind of running off of that, did you ever get the concept for a character and just know instantly how it was going to look, the clothing they were going to wear, and just got it done really quickly and had a lot of fun with it?
So if we got a concept from the concept team, we knew basically everything's basically there. So we knew what they were wearing. It's all part of the whole. But with the character team, like you would not only make the character, but then think about like, okay, was this an armor that's going to be wearable by all the characters? Is this, and then we have, is this going to be mix and match? And so we have a lot of parameters to think about when we're making a character. So yeah, a lot of things go into any one, like like using Logan again, we wanted, not only did we want to give Logan his outfit, but we also wanted the players to be able to wear that outfit as well.
Do you have a playable race that's like more fun or more challenging than like Char, Solari?
Yes, they're both challenging.
Which one's more fun?
I don't know which one is more fun to play or fun. Obviously the Char are, and that, that's fun. Huh? And then then you have the Solari, which are, which are more of the elves and the that kind of forest. I think Char, or yeah.
Do you have different techniques for each race? So like a Char covered in hair is a different style altogether than Solari with a plant on its head.
Do we have like different aesthetics?
So like aesthetics and like techniques. So like I don't imagine oil painting with a palette knife translates extremely well with a Char, but might do better with a Solari.
This is the first time I've ever oil painting something Guild Wars related. I wouldn't think that. I think that for me, the expression and artistic style are what makes the painting interesting, and where to break up shapes, and how to define sharp edges and hard edges and stuff like that. Don't necessarily have a specific, okay, this is also something that's really important when you're painting, is this position. So for some reason, I need to be on eye level with the areas with specific, if I need to do something detail, I'm going to do the Choya's eye. So if I need to, I want to be on the same level, so I do get odd positions. Yeah, okay. Document that position. It's a big challenge going through all of the codes, all of the skirts, everything that exists in the game. So what our focus was is to try to make the mount side of it the best it could be. You know, that's I don't know how many armors and outfits we have in the game, but we have a lot. How viable is oil painting in the game industry? As a learning tool, I think very viable. As an actual medium for the industry, I mean, maybe as a PR kind of thing, but for actual design, because of the ability of digital to adjust so quickly, I don't think. Oh, for an example, my mentor, going back to was I self-taught or not? My mentor was an illustrator for the Seattle Times, and he was a traditional illustrator. He did watercolor, he did oil. I remember he did the BART bus system down in San Francisco. He did this huge oil painting for their advertisement. He actually even hid like the Batmobile in the background, and then got in trouble and had to paint it out. Very amazingly skilled and gifted artist. But it was in the early 90s, and by 96 probably, he had trouble finding work because the industry had switched to digital, and if you didn't adjust, you know, an art director, the same thing. Like if the art director said, you know what, I want the sky to be just a little bit more purple, that meant going back and redoing the whole painting, and then, you know, for him that was like, okay, well, you can get it. You can get it next week. And they're like, actually, our artist can do it in like 20 minutes. It's a color shift. So that was really challenging. You know, digital is the standard. You know, just because of the adjustability, the undo every once in a while. I even do that when I'm painting. I have that reflex.
If you were to start over, what would you study, and how would you study it?
So like I said, I mean, I don't think I would focus on necessarily one thing, aspect, like drawing and being able to, and when I say drawing, I don't necessarily mean drawing something exactly like it is, but having the ability to put down what you want, where you want it. I think that's a skill that is really important. I don't know if I would change that. I mean, I maybe would have painted a lot more in my early 20s. Studied a little bit more about composition and design, and had the internet when I was young. Maybe something that I would change. I think that if you look up any, because you don't really necessarily think about it, but like web design, graphic design, that all talk about like shape language, color harmonies, composition, design philosophies. I think that it's not necessarily something that is immediately connected to sculpting and 3D art, because I think that people kind of feel like it's two different worlds, but you know, just studying graphic design informs you a lot about guidelines on design sensibilities. I have to apologize, it's really hard for me to see the values in this face, and so it might be a little rougher than. Just getting a lot of reflection.
Where will you be posting this painting when it's finished?
I think that is a question for not me. I'm scared. I'm always scared. Painting, it's never easy. Art isn't easy. There's no, the number one thing you have to realize is when you start doing art, it never gets easy. It never is easy, and it's always hard. Which means that I'm not 100. Probably it'll get posted, but I don't want to say it's 100% guarantee because I might mess it all up. I don't even know exactly right now if it looks like what it'll look like when I don't have this light shining on it.
So with art always being a challenge, what do you do to overcome any fear or anxiety that attached to you?
Keep moving forward. Get really focused on the process. I think that's the number one thing. You know, when I talk to students, the most important thing is focusing on the process, not getting caught up on whether it's good or bad. You know, if you're entering oil painting, you know, do 500 paintings before you know you're too self-critical. You know, it's the same thing. Like you get people that come up to you and go, "Oh, you're an artist. I could never be an artist." And I'm like, "Well, how many drawings have you done?" Like, "Well, I used to draw when I was a kid." I'm like, "Well, yeah, so like maybe 20, 30? Yeah, maybe less, 10, okay. Well, do like 500, 600, and then tell me that you can't do it." You know, it's all just where we want to put our focus, but it's all doable. But yeah, you can't. I've been doing watercolor for quite a long time, and it's really, 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 really hard for me. And I know that I'm mostly not going to be completely happy with what I do, but I also believe that the more I do it, someday it's got to work. So I keep pushing.
How did you end up making the shift from character lead to art director?
Sorry, let's take 5. Jesus. It was mentally, or how did it work in the company? Both. It was a position that became available, and the forces at B thought that I would be a good fit, and so that's how it worked, technically, like in the company. mentally it is. You're more involved. You're involved with all the aspects of the game, and you know, you're a little bit, you know, certainly with the character, you're involved with the animators, you're involved with tech art, you're involved. You know, for a while we had creature and character on the same team, so you know, I did that for a while, but. You know, it's a shift. You have a whole bunch of stuff to focus on. Yes. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. Thank you, everybody.